pre-solicitation work group meeting on the fiscal year 21-22 adult education and vocational school zero emission vehicle workforce training project. That's quite a mouthful. I'm Tabitha Willman, and I'm the manager of the Clean Transportation Outreach section in the Mobile Source Control Division at CARB, or the California Air Resources Board. We refer to ourselves as CARB. So I am joined today by Noemi Vitella, who is our project lead for workforce training and development investments. So today's meeting is going to be recorded, and the recording is going to be made available in approximately 2 weeks, and that'll be on CARB's Low Carbon Transportation Investments and Air Quality Improvement Program meeting and workshop webpage. So if there are any disruptions in Zoom for any reason, we will immediately end today's call and meeting, and we will send out a notice to reschedule. We can't, unfortunately, allow any anonymous meeting participants for security reasons. So please make sure your name is clear on the Zoom platform. And if it's not, if you could please change it, that would be greatly appreciated. Particularly if your link was shared by a colleague, it may have somebody else's name on there. So we do have materials today to support the discussion and the presentation that you'll be seeing. And those include slides and an agenda, as well as a handout. And those are available on the CARB Low Carbon Transportation meeting and workshop page. And we will be periodically dropping links in the chat for you all to be able to click on that link and access those materials so you can follow along as we're going. I am now, so actually these materials, I just wanted to highlight that they kind of go into a little bit more in depth. So you'll see the slides, you'll also see the handout. The handout goes into a little bit more depth. And again, if we will be dropping those in periodically. So I'm now going to turn it over to Noemi Vitella.
Thank you, Tab. Hello, everyone. I'm Noemi Vitella. I'm the lead staff for the development of the adult education and vocational school solicitation. Today, we will be covering two main topic areas, which include background on the development of the proposed solicitation and the proposed solicitation criteria and timeline. We have dedicated time for comments and discussion questions after each topic to help gather your feedback. And we will be utilizing polling questions in Zoom as well to learn more about our audience and solicit specific feedback. When we get to the first poll on slide 2, Violet Martin will go over how to use the Zoom feature. Also, we will end our discussion with next steps and key dates for the solicitation so that you guys all know about those details. The purpose of today's discussion is to share the proposed solicitation criteria and ideas and receive public comment ahead of finalizing. CARB has met with stakeholders publicly through the funding plan for clean transportation incentives process to discuss our general plans for workforce investments. So later we will be providing a brief recap of what we have heard from previous stakeholder discussions in the July 2021 and April 2022 work group meetings, and how that helps shape the direction and the development of the solicitation. Instead of coming to you with a fully vetted solicitation concept, we actually want to follow an equity approach and hear from you all on how CARB can best support workforce training and development needs through our initial ideas on the solicitation's project criteria and goals. We're looking to others working in the space to actually determine core lessons and how to tailor this project to best address specific workforce community needs through this project, including educational institutions and workforce programs. For example, we want to know where there's opportunities to expand on or reinforce workforce training support through this solicitation and also maximize benefits for low-income and disadvantaged communities. This project's not the only workforce CARB project investment that's supporting community needs. We're also continuing our partnerships with the California Energy Commission on the inclusive, diverse, equitable, accessible, and local, or also known as the Ideal Zero Emission Vehicle Pilot Project. which focuses on broadly supporting various types of ZEV and infrastructure efforts and pathways towards clean transportation jobs. We're also leveraging existing investments that have workforce elements, such as the Clean Mobility Options Voucher Pilot Project and heavy-duty demonstration and pilot projects. This investment is intended to complement ongoing workforce efforts and build on the critical lessons that CARB and our state and local partners have been learning in this space. Next up is Violet Martin, who's going to be conducting Zoom polls throughout our presentation today.
Good morning, afternoon, everyone. The polls for today will come up as a prompt on Zoom on your screen. However, we do have an option for you to participate in the polling questions via an online web link, which Mac just dropped into the chat for you. You're free to answer these questions that way or through those Zoom features if you're able to access them. Our first questions, there's just a couple that I'm launching 2 at a time this time around. So our first poll is intended to get a sense of who's participating in today's meeting. We'd like to know what region in California your community is located in. Please select the most appropriate region that represents your community and where it's located. And then if you could advance the slide, we have another question, and this is just to get a better understanding of who's attending today's meeting, the type of organization you represent. So you can select all that apply. We have a few options there: community-based organization, non-government or nonprofit, non-governmental or nonprofit, labor or workforce organization, non-governmental or nonprofit social service provider, other non-governmental or nonprofit organization, local or regional government, adult education institution, vocational school, school district or community college, or other higher learning institution, a tribal government, or if none of these represent your type of organization, there's another option as well. So I'm just going to let this, the responses trickle in for just another few seconds here. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the responses that we have. So it looks like we have a good representation throughout the state, and then there's quite a few non-governmental, nonprofit, labor type organizations, as well as local and regional government. Oh, sorry, I didn't share those yet. Get a sense of those. Okay. Okay, I'll turn it back to Noemi.
Thank you, Violet. Okay, so next I would like to briefly share some background that provides the foundation for this effort. In 2021, CARB approved a $1.5 million investment in the fiscal year 2021-2022 funding plan to support clean transportation, workforce training, and development efforts. Since then, staff has been focused on collecting stakeholder feedback through public worker meetings on how to leverage this funding to address the current workforce needs in the clean transportation industry and address barriers of entry for priority populations to training programs and careers. Through this process, we heard the continued need to support programs that have not traditionally had access to funding, and the need to partner and leverage existing adult education and vocational schools to build out ZEV training curriculum throughout the state. This feedback created the backbone of the draft solicitation, and we will be soliciting your feedback today on these criteria and our overall approach to implementing these funds. Though there are multiple legislative and policy drivers for the clean transportation workforce investments in priority populations, the main one is the Senate Bill SB 350 Low Income Barriers Report, which was a call to action for CARB to begin working with our partners, such as the California Energy Commission, to address community identified workforce needs. Specific recommendations from the report are also listed here, and you can see that access to vocational training programs was a key desired outcome. CARB is also working to support and align our investments with the Governor's Office ZEV market development strategy and expanding the partnerships and critical opportunities listed here, such as providing education and career pathways and addressing workforce gaps. Here are some additional legislative drivers for this funding. CARB is working to support complementary goals, including Assembly Bill 841 to train up students to support ZEV infrastructure installation and maintenance, and examples such as those. Next slide. So based on public work group meetings and one-on-one conversations we've had with stakeholders regarding the goals for workforce investments, we've heard that non-traditional education institutions such as adult education and vocational schools should be funded. We've also heard the need to address employment gaps and build relationships with employers, networks, including businesses, and that CARB should support and complement the CEC investments for charging and refilling needs statewide. So now that we've provided some historical context for this solicitation, we want to set the stage for our next few slides. So as mentioned, we're eager to receive your feedback on the proposed solicitation concepts and criteria. And Nick Narenberg will be facilitating the Q&A discussions and we'll be calling on participants today. And that'll happen as soon as we get to slide 14. So just for a few Zoom reminders to make sure that the meeting goes smoothly, all the feedback must be provided verbally today and can also be provided written through feedback outside of the work group meeting. To ask questions or provide comments during our open discussion portions, please use the Zoom raise hand function. To raise your hand, please click on the raise hand icon. And for those of you that are joining us through phone, you will need to press #2 to be able to raise your hand and ask a question. Please make sure that you clearly state your name as well and the affiliation before asking a question or making a comment. And also be mindful that we want to hear from multiple stakeholders. So we will be moving on if someone has continued to provide feedback, but there's still raised hands in the queue. So supporting adult education and vocational school programs allows them to fill key workforce and economic gaps for priority communities, and they create opportunities to build skills for better careers with higher pay and benefits. There are critical needs for ZEV training and education for priority communities, including the creation of or expansion to clean transportation workforce programs with strong career pathways. We are seeking creative ideas for hands-on clean transportation technology training and application, where students are well prepared for clean transportation jobs and can access better wages. Due to the importance of strong clean transportation curriculum in supporting the ZEV transition, CARB is seeking opportunities to strengthen the technology and infrastructure curriculum and tools to support students in building critical skills that are required. Based on all the ideas and feedback received to date, CARB is working towards releasing a competitive solicitation, also known as a request for proposals, in early 2023 to support or expand adult education and vocational school workforce programs to include ZEV training. For this solicitation, CARB is looking to partner with existing adult education and vocational schools in California. We realize the importance of other local organizations and colleges in meeting workforce demands, so we will be looking for creative partnerships rooted in meeting community needs, such as with community colleges and economic development organizations. Funding would be provided to existing programs to include clean transportation education with a focus on building skills to support ZEV technology and infrastructure. One of our core goals is to provide clear and transparent information on desired application content and requirements to help set expectations for the process moving forward. As stated, this funding is tied to clean mobility investments and is rooted in supporting communities' clean transportation needs. Applications must be able to demonstrate a focus on low-income and disadvantaged communities and clearly identify which priority communities they will serve, as outlined on the Cal Enviro Screen 4.0 tool. CARB is not requiring match funding from applicants. We do not want to preclude groups that could potentially participate in these efforts by asking for match funds, but we'll be asking for strong letters of community and educational, economic, and other institution support. We anticipate a 60-day period for applicants to submit proposals, and CARB is working to simplify and streamline the application requirements in this project as much as we can, and want to be flexible so that smaller scale, less resource institutions can more readily apply, and that we can address the greatest workforce gaps and needs. CARB will be considering supporting a mix of both small and large projects throughout this effort. So for the purposes of this solicitation, we're defining adult education and vocational schools or institutions as accredited educational and training programs in or serving low-income and disadvantaged communities, which are targeting older adults that are choosing a different pathway than a four-year degree program. The schools can be technical or trade-based schools focused on technology-related vocations, and we're open to ideas for if this is too narrow of a focus or and we're looking forward to hearing feedback on how we can better serve these training programs. So we went through that pretty quickly, but now we actually want to after sharing our goals and objectives, we want to open it up for a group discussion, and the solicitation criteria will be shared later in the presentation. So we want to make sure that the feedback that we get today are specifically for the goals, the focus, and how we're defining adult and vocational education institutions. We want to make sure that our plans align with what you're seeing in communities and that existing workforce program needs are met. So to get this conversation going, we've prepared some questions for you. And the first one is, are there other considerations for the definition of adult education and vocational schools that we should be considering? Also, are there any additional goals or objectives that CARB should consider as we develop the solicitation? And are there any specific locations or criteria that CARB should consider to ensure that investments are focused where they're most needed? Nick is going to be calling on raised hands, and he's going to be calling on folks as they appear on Zoom.
All right, thank you, Noemi. So it looks like we have one or two hands raised. We'll start with Ashley. So Ashley, you have to unmute on your end. Otherwise, feel free to go with your question. Thank you.
Hello, I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Thank you for this extremely exciting webinar. I've been waiting for this, and I think I heard the beginning of these discussions when it was piloted in in Long Beach, maybe a ZEV or a ZEV training program over there. I'm calling on behalf of I'm a air quality specialist at the San Luis Obispo Air Pollution Control District, but I'm also representing some adult education programs in our AB 1550 areas on the coast. We're a small area, and we usually don't have any match funding, and we are somewhat behind on EV adoption. And I guess the couple things I wanted, when I was thinking about this program, we have a big community college that serves the county, and there's two campuses, but they're not located in the AB 1550 area, yet they serve the county, and people in our 1550 areas, they go there. And so I figured that's kind of a problem. And so I didn't know how we would deal with, for an adult education or school, if they're not physically in an AB 1550 area, but they serve the entire county. We have a small county. That was one thing. And then my second question was that as an air district, I run the EV Charger AB 617 program. And in our county, and this is also CARB required. They have something called Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Training Program, which I'm sure you guys know, and it's a state requirement for any state-funded grant programs for installing chargers. And that would be more, I think, towards the end. Like that would be probably the goal on the end side of the workforce development. And I think it's important to tie that in somewhere, or like tie that in somewhere with the whole workforce. We're maybe working with EVITP certified contractors. The issue we have is that we don't have almost any EVITP certified contractors in our county. And the ones that we do have, they usually come from other counties. And so I just want to make sure that, that EVITP certification is somehow involved in it, or it's like a pathway to that. And yeah, I'll end it there.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. So that's a really good, they're really good questions and points. I do want to clarify that we are going to get into the project criteria a little bit later. So a lot of the information that we're covering in the second half of the meeting might answer some of your questions. But to briefly answer your question on how projects can help the priority communities that we're trying to target, I do want to clarify that 100% of the project funds are intended to go directly to priority communities. And one of the goals for the project is really to hit the most disadvantaged communities as possible. And so applicants will be required to demonstrate that the projects are serving priority communities, and will be required to collect data for the full project term to demonstrate that they're hitting these goals and objectives for the funding. So there are opportunities for programs to extend or expand their projects to include communities. Some folks might be interested in doing online courses or extending classes outside of their area, and that's an opportunity too. So we'll be getting that into that a little bit later, and hopefully we can answer that a little bit more comprehensively. As far as EVITP goes, one of the key requirements for applicants for this project, again, is to demonstrate that programs are getting into, serving priority communities, and having strong partnerships and creating training and career pathways to good quality jobs and opportunities is another objective. So this also includes EVSE installation and service and maintenance. And we'll be getting into that later into the discussion. But that's definitely something that CARB is encouraging, and EVITP is hopefully going to be part of every area in the program or projects that are part of this effort.
Okay, so we can move on to the next hands that raised. I see about 8 or 9. And so the next one in line is Luana Medina. I'm going to unmute you right now. So please, there you go. Unmute yourself. I believe it still looks like you're on mute on my end.
Oh, there it goes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, perfect. My name is Luana Medina. I am with the County of Los Angeles. I'm an environmental initiatives manager under there. I manage a portfolio of EV programs, EVSE programs called under the SoCal Even Access, which is a regional based portfolio. And one of the things, and I actually have a lot of questions about the solicitation, but to answer these specific questions, I think, additional goals or objectives that CARB should consistently include as they develop solicitations with workforce is high prioritized populations, and specifically populations such as re-entering citizens, at-risk youths, homeless, because what we are seeing in the market, especially with EVSE infrastructure, is of course there's this high need of operation and maintenance, but there also is this large need for ZEVs, vehicles regarding mechanics. So that's another huge gap in the market that currently exists. And so really trying to set an objective that prioritizes those populations will help to progress and make sure that, diversity and inclusion are always at the top of our list. And then, of course, removing inequities that currently exist for those populations. And then, specific locations, as you know, the county, we have about 10.5 million residents. We're hugely urbanized. I think I saw something on TikTok where we have a huge portion of, I think, over, I don't know, 18 states. We carry that one population in a small geographic area. And so really understanding about, the inequities that currently exist in current, environmental corridors where, air quality is so significant in the damage that is currently occurring due to fossil fuel vehicles. So really trying to pursue and prioritizing those locations, I think, should always be on the top of the list as well. I do have some questions about the solicitation, but I'll wait till you guys get to your other slides. I really appreciate the time, though. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So the next raised hand in line is Kim. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and you should be good to go.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for this pre-solicitation webinar. My name is Kim Springer, and I'm with the City County Association of Governments of San Mateo County. I just wanted to sort of chime in about the nexus between EVSE and building electrification. I know that this effort is really focused on EV charging infrastructure, but there's really this nexus between the two. With building electrification. In a lot of cases, infrastructure changes on buildings will be necessary for the charging infrastructure. And I think that there's a real need for the workforce to be familiar with changing codes, reach codes, and sizing of infrastructure, electrical panels, that type of thing. For not just charging infrastructure, but electrification of buildings, which I think is also pertinent to CARB. We're not going to be a training organization, but are certainly supporting an effort down the road in San Mateo County, and that's why I'm listening in today. We intend to have a little more discussion with the California Workforce Development Board and with our local organizations, JobTrain and NovaWorks. To see what we can put together for a broader set of training needed in this transition that we're in to cleaner air. And also on the resilient side, for instance, on maintenance of green infrastructure for flooding and that type of work. So I just wanted to chime in those nexus, and that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, up next we have Alex. I'm going to give you permission to talk, unmute you. So we should be good to go as long as you unmute on your end.
Yes, hi. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, so my name is Alex Aceto, and I am a director of sales for a company that sells hydrogen fuel cell technology. And the reason why I'm listening to this discussion on this webinar is because, it's very important to also consider applications of when you're talking about renewable energy and you're talking about the EV infrastructure, is that in today's environment, the electrical utilities are having a hard time upgrading the necessary infrastructure to support EV charging, particularly in the fast charging, the level 3 chargers. And there's a big gap between what everybody wants to do in terms of expanding the network of all the EV charging dispensers. But at the same time, it's how are you able to get enough energy in order to support that type of infrastructure when the utilities are not necessarily in a position today to accomplish that in an expeditious manner. Now, for us, we have created a technology that kind of helps expedite that. And the purpose for me, wanting to discuss this with the team on this call is because we would also like to support the efforts of the vocational schools to not only learn about EV charging, solar panels, and basically just all renewable energy. And part of that should also be looking at hydrogen and how hydrogen can contribute to that infrastructure, and create a curriculum that's all inclusive between hydrogen, solar, and grid, and how it all ties together, and how do you make an effective solution so that the outcome that the customer experience of using electric vehicle charging stations would actually want to continue to do that. So we as GENSO would like to offer options on how we can contribute to the vocational school system in order to get the next leaders of our future, in order to educate them on everything relating to renewable energy and real world applications, that not only we could put equipment at the facility for them to have real world experience in working with the systems, understanding how they all correlate and they engage with each other, and then how you're able to also support and maintain these types of systems long term, so that these technicians and next leaders are able to go out in the field and actually implement these types of solutions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. One of the core goals, and we'll get into that in a bit, but one of the core goals for this solicitation is that we support partnership building. And so I don't know if you joined earlier when we did the poll, but there are a few folks that might be interested in partnering up, or you know, if you want to introduce yourself too, but I can be contacted and I can share a list of all of the participants today so that you guys can connect as well.
All right, so next up, we have Blanca. Blanca, I'm gonna ask you to unmute. Oh. Where did we lose Blanca?
Hello.
Hi, I hear you.
Okay, great. My name is Blanca Lopez. I'm with the Plugin IE. We are based in the Inland Empire, and we are a high road training partnership, also funded by WIOA. I just wanted to, I guess, clarify the consideration for the definition of adult education and vocational schools. I know you mentioned community colleges, and we are in partnership with some of the community colleges here. Also in partnership with some of the trade unions who also do training on electric infrastructure, but currently there's a need for funding to expand that training and workforce opportunities. And so I was wondering if it's possible for an organization like ourselves to potentially put in a solicitation with, you know, we ourselves are not adult education or vocational schools, but we are building training and career pathways with partners like the community college systems and union trade groups that have apprenticeship programs in place, but, you know, through our partnership and through additional funding, want to expand and collaborate on that. And so that was my question, just in terms of the considerations for who can submit solicitations.
Thank you for your question, Blanca. Again, we will get into the details in a bit, but just to quickly answer your question, we are seeking that lead applicants be specific to adult education and vocational school programs. So this doesn't mean that community colleges or other organizations that are related to these institutions cannot partner with the adult and vocational school. So that would be something that you could potentially do through a partnership with an adult education and vocational school program. What we want to make sure is that we want to know from communities too and the stakeholders if the capacity to do this is a challenge for applicants. So if you want to share also some of those challenges, I think that would be helpful.
Sorry, some challenges in relation to the capacity?
Yeah, to that, and then partnering with adult education and vocational school programs as well, since that is one of the focus. But if you have something to add there, that would be helpful.
Okay, so just to clarify, if we have a partnership with an adult vocational school or an adult education or vocational school, then we can potentially apply as a partner. But community colleges, or say like union apprenticeship programs wouldn't qualify as a lead applicant?
Thank you. So to clarify, so we're looking to applicants that are adult education and vocational school programs. We're encouraging partnerships with other workforce organizations, and this could include community colleges or other institutions or organizations that could help support the curriculum and training for the adult education and vocational school program. So the lead applicant does have to be an adult education and vocational institution.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Blanca.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. Next up, we have Tom Knox. You're just have to unmute on your end. You're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. This is Tom Knox of Valley Clean Air Now. And so just to follow on that last question, could you define an adult education institution versus a community college, which is very often doing workforce training?
Yeah, so Nick, can you go back to the adult education and vocational school definition?
Sure.
Just so folks can reference it too. So again, just for purposes of this solicitation, the adult education and vocational school definition that we're using is accredited educational and training programs in lower income and disadvantaged communities that are targeting older adults that are choosing a different pathway than a four-year degree program. And these can be technical or trade-based schools focused on technology-related vocations.
So I believe most community colleges would fit this definition. Is there an intention to exclude community colleges?
The intent for this solicitation is to partner specifically with adult education and vocational schools. There are other opportunities at CARB that are potentially partnering or investing with community colleges at some degree. So we're trying to focus strictly on adult education and vocational schools, because this is one area that's been either passed up on funding in the past or a new area that we want to partner with and explore. Additionally, in previous work group meetings, we've heard to the need to partner with these institutions. So which is why this is one of the focus. I see Ashley and Tab have joined.
I'm sorry. My main question actually is, so this is very limited funding, statewide. There are quite a few public and nonprofit adult education and vocational institutions. And there's a well-documented risk of for-profit job training schools being extremely expensive and failing to do a good job in job placement. I think it's fair to say that the public good would be maximized by excluding for-profit institutions from this definition, given the fact that there's so many options for public and nonprofit that tend to do a better job, in terms of their outputs and their job placement records.
Thank you, Tom. Definitely student protections are one thing that we're looking into as well and considering as we develop the solicitation. So we'll definitely take your feedback and try to see how we can incorporate that into the development of the solicitation. So I appreciate it. Ashley or Tab, I saw you guys jump on it. Did you guys want to add anything?
Yeah, really quick. Also want to echo, thank you, Tom, for your great feedback. I definitely see what you're saying within the definition of adult and vocational school. So I would like to provide just a little bit of context that I think might be helpful for the purposes of this conversation, which is it's not the intent to exclude community colleges, but what we're grappling with, like you said, with the limited funding that we do have, is we want to make sure that we focus our investments in areas where we have not previously. And we have a lot of investment that's happened with the community colleges, both through our Ideals of Workforce pilot project that Noemi mentioned earlier. We have a lot of outreach and other things being funded with the community colleges as well. So we were trying to diversify a little bit and meet some of the needs that haven't already been met. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. And also, I just wanted to stress the flexibility here. So if we're finding that it does not work to make the lead applicant an adult and vocational school based on how things are structured and based on the greatest need, I think that is something that we would like to hear. I don't think this is set in stone. That's kind of the purposes of having this discussion today, to understand what the real needs are and how we best structure this to make sure that we're addressing exactly what we're seeing on the ground. So I just want to say thank you, Tom. Really appreciate the feedback.
Okay, so the next person with their hand raised is Enid. Giving you permission to speak. Just have to unmute on your end.
Yes, can you hear me? Okay.
Yep, we
All
got you.
right. I'm Nina Jaffe, and I'm working with Project Uplift in San Bernardino. And I have a couple questions. First, would adult education programs of public schools be eligible, since many of them have adult ed? Second, I'd like to do a +1 to Tom Knox's comment. I was going to say the same thing, that I think these for-profit institutions that a lot of people go to for basic electrical training are not the best use of CARB's funding and taxpayer funding. And third, I'd like to put a wish list item in for pre-apprenticeship training, because EVITP requires that you first be a certified journeyman. Being a certified journeyman requires going through a state program, and it takes about 5 years, and you have to have about 8,000 hours of field work. So that's a very long path. And what we're trying to do is create a ramp, and also create opportunities for jobs that may not be full-on electricians, but are more around operation and maintenance of charging stations. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Enid. We appreciate that feedback. To answer your first question on public schools being able to apply for this project, they would be, and they are encouraged to apply.
Great.
Okay, so next up we have Jessica. Mute on your end and you're ready to go.
Hi, thanks. Jesse Hammerling. I'm with the UC Berkeley Labor Center, the co-director of the Green Economy Program. And I just, to build off of that last comment, would like to just encourage you all to think about encouraging explicitly partnerships with apprenticeship programs in the solicitation for a lot of the reasons that have already been brought up here. And I don't know if apprenticeship fits in your definition of adult education and vocational school. I think it absolutely should, based on the definition you've presented to us here. But I think it's really important, especially for building off existing state-supported certifications like EVITP, but also for encouraging partnerships with workforce organizations that have integral close relationships with employers to match students, give them on-the-job training experience and jobs coming out of training by connecting to apprenticeship programs. So I would really encourage you to more explicitly integrate a focus on apprenticeships into the solicitation, because I think that's really important for the success of this program and for avoiding public money going into sort of one-off dead-end training programs that aren't connected to a real career pathway for people. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great feedback.
Okay, so next up we have Rodney. Should just unmute on your end and you're ready to go.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
All right, Rodney Branch, Central Valley Fresno Adult School. As mentioned, we are excited about the opportunity and what it means for the students and the community that we serve. Not to get too far ahead, but would the expectation be that the curriculum for these training courses be developed by an outside entity or something that's done within our system?
let's see, I don't think we get into those details too much later on in the discussion, but definitely adding or expanding existing curriculum to include ZEV workforce training is definitely a goal and objective for the solicitation. How institutions do that, I think that's something that we're looking into and something we would like to get feedback on, especially on some of the challenges that might be created based on the criteria that we go on into later. But yeah, definitely expanding ZEV and curriculum and education is part of this solicitation.
Thank you.
And Rodney, I will add one additional thing. I think the challenge is that there's limited funding. So we're encouraging folks to be very creative in how the updates to the curriculum be made, which is why we're not being overly prescriptive in the requirements of the solicitation that we're raising today. So we welcome ideas and suggestions for how this might be done. We're not suggesting that folks have to contract that work out if that does not make sense. So thank you so much for your feedback, though, because that's a really great question and something we need to be thinking about.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have John. Unmute on your end.
Okay, I'm unmuted. This is John Taylor from the College of Alameda in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I just wanted to say that, like Mr. Knox earlier, I think you're kind of setting aside some of the major infrastructure for getting this done with the community colleges and probably aren't putting heavy enough focus on the existing community colleges that can deliver on all these objectives for you. We're a member of the California Council on Diesel Emissions Training, the CDAT group, which has pretty much been dropped like a hot potato since the Senate bill was changed a few years ago. You were funding the colleges for that, and then all that funding dried up without having the luxury of grant writers for that. Without ARB's help, in addition to continuing with the CDAT training, you know, as it evolves, we've also been working on our own to try and upgrade our existing equipment to teach with these new technologies. We're building the new facility that's been in the works for 10 years and breaks ground this month, which is going to include hydrogen detection and enough electrical to handle a small fast charger for training. Our college has auto, diesel mechanics, aeronautics, body, among others, all set to go to train in these new technologies. We've been partnering with MetroEd in San Jose to help get their adult education program off the ground since they lost their instructor a few years ago. We're partnering with other colleges around the state to train these, electric school bus technicians, because they're pretty much left in the dark with a fleet of vehicles they don't know how to utilize or work on. And so we just want to make sure that you realize how important and how beneficial the community colleges in the area can be. Even though we're in a highly expensive area to live in, we have a lot of low-income communities in our district, and we have a very strong relationship with the Machinists Union. We have the apprenticeship program for the heavy-duty mechanics, and we have a strong employer network and an advisory committee of most of the trucking, municipality, transit agencies in the immediate San Francisco Bay Area. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Okay, so we have 2 hands left. I think we're getting close on time too. So the next up is David.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be quick. Dave Teasdale, Kern Community College District. I just wanted to point out, if CARB is intent is to get the funding distributed beyond the community colleges. I think that should be established. Adult education is a term of art in California. There's a California adult education program, which is a collaboration of community colleges and adult schools. There are adult education consortia around the state. For instance, in our area, Kern Community College District chairs the consortia, and there are many other adult education entities that are involved. So I do think some additional work on the definition probably is required. Perhaps some specificity on the delivery mechanism so that you can get to the goal that you're trying to achieve. That's just my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Okay, last up, we have Ralph. We have unmuted you.
Hi, this is Ralph Trout with CalSTAR. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you for taking I appreciate your time. With regards to the CARB and this program, there was a program called AB 841 with the Energy Commission and the Public Utility Commission for the past 2 years that dealt with this particular topic for providing online education for electric vehicle infrastructure training courses. Is this going to be a follow-on of the Energy Commission PUC program, or are you guys going to look at that for lessons learned, what went right, what went wrong?
I wouldn't necessarily say that we're doing a follow-up based on that bill, but it is something that we are considering as we're implementing these projects and efforts.
Okay, just curious. And also the PUC has the Clean Miles Standard program, where the elimination of ICE vehicles in support of Lyft as well as taxi services. With that program, removing all those vehicles off the road is going to put a very large demand on a lack of skills in this industry with regards not just to installation, but also the ongoing maintenance necessary. So what coordination is going to be on with the PUC and the Energy Commission on the program called Clean Mile Standard, CMS? As they've outlined, they've got over $1 billion they're going to be looking for workforce development. So I'm just putting a bug in your ear that needs to be looked at with regards to the Energy Commission and the Public Utility Commission on the Clean Miles Standard, known as CMS. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, so that's it with all the raised hands.
Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for the feedback. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take all the feedback we heard today, and we're going to determine what modifications we need to be doing for the solicitation that we've developed so far. As a reminder for everyone, these discussion questions are available on the website. So those are available through the presentation that's posted online. So you can see those later if you want to follow up with me or the team and provide additional feedback. You're welcome to do so. And please do that by Thursday, January 26th. All right, so moving on. Okay. So for this next portion of the meeting, I am going to be covering the solicitation specifics, including the proposed project criteria and our initial ideas, including the timing for the solicitation. So we're working with a total allocation of about $1.5 million for this effort. And we would like to fund community-centered adult education and vocational school projects that meet diverse needs in the communities. And this could include both large and small projects. So for the purposes of the solicitation and based on the total funding, we define this with a threshold of $250,000. So anything over that amount would be considered a larger project. We would like to see a mix of large and small projects, but there's no preference, only that we support multiple schools through this effort. And we will prioritize areas of the state that have not received funding. Once we get to the next open discussion, we would love to hear your thoughts on these ideas. So in order to bolster existing workforce investments, which was a critical area of the state partner feedback we received, we're focusing this funding on leveraging existing adult education and vocational school programs. And this will be more this will immediately help increase the number of programs in priority communities that provide clean transportation career and professional development opportunities for students. It'll reduce barriers to entry into clean transportation programs and careers, and also address community-specific clean transportation workforce needs and gaps. And so new programs would be would not be precluded from applying, but existing programs will be prioritized for the funding. So we have already discussed some of the objectives for this program, but also want to flag the importance of increasing awareness and outreach to priority communities on adult education and vocational clean transportation training opportunities, and also expanding student services such as tuition assistance and no or low cost training materials that support community enrollment in programs. So in order to support the equity goals of the programs, CARB is considering bonus points as well for the solicitation scoring. And some of these could include efforts such as providing opportunities for high unemployment or underemployment communities. Also demonstrating that projects can sustain past CARB funding. That they have the ability to replicate clean transportation workforce development programs in other communities. And also focus on alternative technology and fuel applications based on community needs, such as on and or off-road vehicles and hydrogen fueling stations and their systems and parts. So proposals submitted will need to meet minimum project requirements to be considered for funding. The training programs must be provided by an accredited adult education or vocational school that is in or serving an AB 1550 and SB 535 priority population. This could also include rural communities, tribes, African American, Asian American, Latino, and other communities of color. The job training or education must prepare participants for occupations connected to clean transportation. And training and curriculum must also meet clean transportation needs and include clean transportation technology and application, and must be focused on training for light, medium, or heavy duty ZEV technologies, training on ZEV infrastructure, including systems and parts, or ZEV manufacturing. Projects must also demonstrate a focus on supporting goals or increased awareness, manufacturing, vehicle and equipment maintenance, and increasing charging access, etc. They must support participants' professional development for clean transportation job readiness and placement, including skills development or upskilling, and must provide clean transportation training, including dedicated outreach and awareness building in priority communities. Projects that focus on training or workforce programs outside of California will be deemed ineligible and disqualified, as the benefits must be in the state. We have developed a handout that lists examples of eligible and ineligible project types, and we're dropping the link again in Zoom for your reference. Please refer to the handout for further details on project requirements and additional details to support the next few slides. Thank you, Mac. Okay, so funding for projects will be limited to developing or expanding existing curriculum to include clean transportation and support equipment training. It can also support project development and program operations expenses, such as for acquiring and procuring equipment or training faculty and activities such as those. Also, a maximum of 10% of the project funding can be dedicated to administrative expenses, given the desire to maximize benefits to students. We have also included additional eligible project expenses, which are detailed in the handout. And we want to better understand from you all the levels of funding needed to implement these project categories. So I'm going to turn it over to Violet to conduct our third poll, since we have a little bit of data we'd like to collect from you.
So we know it's important to right-size funding for equity-driven projects, and given the proposed criteria and eligible expenses that Naomi just went over, what is a reasonable amount of funding for these types of workforce projects and requirements? So I'm going to give you an opportunity to weigh in on that. We have up to 750,000, up to 500,000, up to 250,000, or less than 250,000, or perhaps there's another amount that you have in mind. And just as a reminder, this should come up as a prompt on your Zoom screen to enter these, or you can also participate via the online link, online survey form. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll now and share the results with everyone. There's a pretty good spread, but it seems like the majority is up to 750,000 based on those that participated. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Noemi.
Thank you, Violet, and to everyone that's been participating on our polls today. We're going to be taking back your feedback for this poll, and we're going to think about the best way to determine the funding thresholds for the funding of this project. So thank you again for the feedback. For those of you that answered other, we'd love to hear from you on your recommendations for the funding during our next open discussion, which is going to happen on slide 24. All right, so moving on. For this next portion, please refer to the handout, which has more detailed information on how we can plan to review and evaluate applications for the solicitation. CARB is going to evaluate and score each proposal individually according to a predetermined scoring rubric and not score against the other projects. This rubric is going to be finalized based on the feedback we heard today on the most critical elements of the project, but at a minimum will include 4 critical elements, which are partnerships, outreach and engagement, data collection and reporting, and analysis of investments. Project applicants must also demonstrate that they're supported by strong partners and will be required to provide verifiable letters demonstrating community support. Applicants must also plan to conduct dedicated outreach with communities, which is necessary to ensure successful project implementation. Projects will be required to collect data and fulfill metrics that measure the training program and project progress, including training information on the program benefits. And projects will also be required to measure participants' level of satisfaction with the program and will be required to collect data on employment outcomes, including how access to potential economic opportunities has increased for participating students and participants, including the trainees' experiences and where the program can improve. Each category will be weighed according to the equity goals and desired program outcomes. And so please refer to the handout that's been provided for more information on these details. All right, so now that we went over the proposed solicitation criteria, we would like to hear from your ideas and if there's any other project elements that we might be missing. We want to know what challenges or opportunities these requirements might also cause. And so the discussion questions that will help this feedback now are, if there's any other workforce project elements that CARB should be considering, including in the solicitation. And do the proposed project criteria result in challenges for potential applicants and projects? And lastly, how should CARB best outreach the solicitation and connect critical partners? So as a reminder, if you would like to ask a question or share a comment, please use the raise hand function in Zoom or hit #2 for those of you calling in by phone. Also, please remember to state your name and affiliation before speaking. So now Nick will now call on you for comments and questions.
Okay, thank you, Mimi. So it looks like first hand up is Blanca, and I give you permission to speak.
Hi there. I just wanted to speak on some of the grant allows for equipment purchases for trainings and things like that. And just as a comment, we've experienced some challenges in the procurement process often of equipment, especially if there are vehicles, and some of the criteria that involves procurement of the vehicles, who will end up with them ultimately, and just like a lot of different roadblocks with equipment purchases. And so I just wanted to flag that as something to look at in terms of what the requirements are for purchasing equipment, and sort of what the back end looks like for reporting and those things, because we've come up against challenges with that already through different funding streams as well.
Great feedback, thank you.
Okay, next up is Ashley. I've given you permission to unmuted you.
Thanks. I guess there's just one thing, because I've heard of a couple of speakers who have great established programs. And I think you guys mentioned that there'll be some consideration for certain communities that have never, received awards before, or haven't gotten an opportunity to participate in this space yet, but are, but the community is very interested and would love, an opportunity to do this. So I just hope that there are, despite not have previously had the opportunity to participate before, they will have a, that will be considered, or hopefully that'll go into consideration as well, so that we can spread that kind of knowledge and those kind of programs in areas that haven't had access to it before. That's just it.
Thank you.
Now we have John. His hand's raised, so I've unmuted you.
Okay, in addition to the high cost of the new technology, especially when we're talking heavy duty and trucks and buses, the other area that is probably going to need some attention is marketing, because if you're starting some new training programs, you're already competing with private schools like for example in Sacramento that spend millions in marketing. So if you're going to kickstart some of these programs, they're probably going to need help in that area as well. Otherwise, enrollment is going to suffer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any more raised hands at this moment.
Okay, let's allow for a additional moment to see if anybody has a question or comment.
All right, I see Blanca's hand raised. There you go. I just unmuted you.
Hi, I just wanted to, since you are sort of taking feedback and making decisions, and I just wanted to get an idea of the timeline specifically around the comment that was mentioned earlier, if apprenticeship programs could potentially be considered to be lead applicants, and what the timeline might be for some of the determinations around those factors.
Thank you. I'm actually going to share a timeline on that in a bit. But definitely, if you have additional feedback you'd like to provide, we are getting comments up until late January, so you can always follow up with any additional feedback as well. But if nobody has any other questions, let's get into the timeline if folks are okay with that. Good. Okay. All right, so here is the proposed timeline and deadlines for getting the grant agreements into place. So just to clarify and disclose, this is a tentative timeline. And it's tentative because we want to allow for planning based on the current progress and things that might change according to the feedback that we've heard today. So our plan is to revise our goals and solicitation criteria based on what we've heard again today and incorporate your feedback, and also finalize the development of the solicitation. So once we update, we plan to release the solicitation in February of 2023. And we're planning to hold a workshop Q&A session in March 2023, which will provide prospective applicants and interested stakeholders another opportunity to ask questions specific to the solicitation. So the deadline essentially to submit is anticipated to be May of this year. And we're hoping to, or aiming to score and issue notice of awards by July 2023. So realistically, projects won't really be in place until early 2024. And so the deadline to sign formal agreements is going to be May of 2024 with a funding expenditure deadline of 2026. So projects should be looking at about 1.5 years with 6 months of data collection to happen. All right, so we are going to focus the next few weeks on addressing the comments and concerns that we have been presented with for the solicitation to allow the release as early as possible in 2023. Additional details will be released as well specific to the Q&A session to support program development. And before we end the meeting today, we have another Zoom poll question for you guys to participate in.
I'll go ahead and get that launched. So we're just generally interested if this is the type of grant funding that you all would be interested in applying for. Okay, I'll go ahead and in the poll now, give everyone a glimpse at what results are. We have quite a few yes, but a lot of uncertainty out there. So I don't know if that's a mix of, just the type of people that are present today, or there's other things that are weighing in on that. But I will hand it back to Naomi.
Noemi, you're muted.
Thank you so much. So if there's any folks that answered not sure, we are happy to provide additional information before the solicitation is released. So feel free to contact me. I'll be sharing that in a bit with you. All right, let's see. Okay, so yeah, here's my contact information. We welcome, again, additional feedback and want to keep an open dialogue with all throughout the solicitation development. So as a reminder, please provide comments to any responses to the discussion questions we presented today by Thursday, January 26th. And we will follow up after the work group meeting with some recording material, and we'll be posting on the CARB meetings and workshop webpage in approximately 2 weeks. So again, yeah, here's my email, and you guys are welcome to contact me after the worker meeting for additional feedback if you'd like to provide. All right, so it looks like we are at the end of the work group meeting today. Again, we want to thank you all for joining and for the great feedback that you presented today. And we want to wish you guys all a great day and a great weekend.
Before we close out, are there any remaining questions?
There is. I see a hand. Oh, I did see a hand, but it disappeared. So there's no hands currently raised.
Great, thank you all.